The rain hadn't let up since midnight. It fell in sheets across the windows of the hospital cafeteria, dulling the skyline to a watercolor blur. Clara Bennett sat hunched at the end of a plastic table, her scrubs stiff with sweat and disinfectant, the coffee in her hands long gone cold. The fluorescent lights above her buzzed. A crumpled post-it note stuck to her ID badge read, in looping blue ink. "Don't forget Aunt Clara's coming today." She promised. A promise. Made at 3:12 a.m. through a blurry video call with a child who couldn't move her legs. Clara rubbed her temples, blinking back the wave of emotion. She had just wrapped a 14-hour double shift in the cardiac ICU. But the only thing that mattered was catching the 6:35 a.m. flight to Milwaukee. Her niece, Lucy, was 8 years old and recovering from a spinal surgery that had left her scared and silent. Clara hadn't been there when she woke up. This morning she would be. That was the plan, at least, until the dominoes started falling. Hello, my wonderful story family. I have missed you all. Thank you for sticking around with me. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us go back to today's story. Her Uber got stuck behind a delivery truck. Then came the wrong terminal. Then security lines. And finally, the words that derailed everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Flight 4821 to Milwaukee has moved to Gate 38C, now departing in 7 minutes. Clara sprinted. Dodging rolling suitcases, ducking past business travelers, she ran like the hospital depended on her. Like her heart might give out if she didn't make it. Somewhere near a glass-walled VIP lounge, a woman in a black blazer stood holding a tablet, her gaze scanning. "Miss Benetti," she called out. Clara, breathless, came to a halt. She hadn't caught the last name. Just the tone of urgency. Just the glimmer of possibility. "Yes," she said, panting. "Excellent. Right this way." The private terminal was so quiet it felt like a different world. No overhead announcements. No crying babies. Just the sound of polished shoes on marble and the echo of her own doubts. "Am I early?" Clara asked hesitantly, her voice echoing slightly in the space. The woman with the tablet, she hadn't given her name, only smiled and gestured toward the tarmac. "Everything is ready for you, Miss Benetti. Champagne or coffee once you're airborne." Clara blinked. "Coffee, I guess." Moments later, she was stepping onto a sleek white jet with gold trim and custom wood interior. Leather seats, an actual fireplace hologram glowing in the lounge area, and an aroma that smelled like citrus, cedarwood, and wealth. A flight attendant in navy greeted her. "Welcome aboard, Miss Benetti." Clara wanted to correct her, she did. But she was dizzy, disoriented, and so tired. The engines hummed like silk. The window beside her showed nothing but sky. Below them, the clouds were tinged with orange, the sun cresting over the earth like a whispered secret. Clara sipped the espresso someone had placed in front of her. Her fingers trembled. Her brain was starting to catch up to her body. This wasn't a commercial plane. There were no other passengers. Just her. And a level of quiet luxury she had only ever seen on magazine covers at the hair salon. The seats were stitched with Italian leather. The tray table was mahogany. A silver card sat on the cushion beside her, embossed with a single letter, V. Then came the realization. This wasn't her flight. This wasn't anyone's flight to Milwaukee. And whoever Miss Benetti was, she was supposed to be sitting where Clara was. The cabin door hissed open mid-flight. Clara's heart jumped. She turned instinctively, and saw him. At first glance, he looked like someone from a cologne ad, tall, lean, world-weary. Shirt sleeves rolled, dark trousers hanging off narrow hips, a steel watch on one wrist, a lit cigarette in the other. He moved like someone used to silence and expensive consequences. He took one look at Clara and stopped. "Who the hell are you?" he asked calmly, coolly. His accent was subtle, American, but with an edge. Maybe New England. Maybe just rich. Clara stood, heart hammering. I think there's been a mistake," she stammered. "I'm Clara. Clara Bennett. There was a woman who thought I was someone else, and I was late and—" "You're not Lucia Benetti," he said flatly. "No. Then why are you on my jet?" Clara looked down at her hands. "I don't know." A beat passed. Then, without blinking, he crossed the room, poured himself a drink, and said, "Well, we're halfway over the Atlantic. So I guess you're coming to Italy." She should have panicked. She should have cried or shouted or begged them to turn around. But instead, Clara stared out the window again, and for the first time in months, her chest rose with something she didn't recognize. Awe, fear, possibility. Outside, the ocean glittered. And beside her, the man had settled onto the couch, one hand on his tumbler, the other resting on a sleek leather notebook. She took a breath. "What's your name?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "Just said, Vincent." Of course it was. It suited him like shadow suits the night. "Vincent who?" "Just Vincent." Another silence. He finally turned to look at her again. This time, his eyes didn't look annoyed. "Just curious. You're really a nurse?" he asked. Clara nodded. "Cardiac trauma, ICU. You don't look like one." "I get that a lot." Another pause. Then his lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. Something else. Like she'd said something he hadn't heard in a long time. "What would you do if you accidentally boarded a billionaire's jet? Would you demand to be flown home, or see where fate might be leading you? Let us know in the comments. Your answer might be more revealing than you think." The jet banked softly, shifting its angle. Clara caught a glimpse of the Alps through the clouds, the jagged peaks like gods frozen mid-battle. Italy wasn't just a word now. It was below her feet. She glanced at Vincent. He hadn't spoken in several minutes. But he hadn't asked her to leave. He hadn't summoned security. In fact, he seemed strangely at ease. "I'll pay you back," she said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. "For the flight, the espresso, the jet fuel." He chuckled softly, "Just once. You think I need your money? I don't like feeling like a thief." "You're not." And then softer, he added. "You're something else entirely. I'm just not sure what yet." Clara turned her face back to the glass. The Alps blurred into mist. Something had shifted in the air. Not just between them, but inside her. A chapter had opened without warning. And no one, not even Clara, knew how it would end.
The wheels touched down so softly that Clara didn't even realize they'd landed until the cabin pressure shifted in her ears. Florence. A city that, to her, had always seemed like a painting, too old, too perfect, too far away from the New York subways and emergency codes she lived inside. Now it was unfolding just outside the window. Terracotta rooftops basking in morning gold, winding streets dotted with mopeds, ancient cathedrals casting long shadows on cobbled roads. The Duomo towered in the distance like a stone guardian, its dome lit by heaven itself. Vincent didn't speak during the descent. He simply finished his drink, flipped through the leather notebook, and then stood before the jet even stopped moving. His presence was magnetic. Not loud, just felt. "You coming?" he asked, turning slightly toward her. Clara hesitated. "This really isn't my trip," she said quietly, still buckled into her seat. "No," he said, "but it might be your beginning." The black Maserati waiting for them outside looked like it belonged in a Bond film. Its driver, a young man with olive skin and mirrored sunglasses, spoke in rapid Italian and bowed slightly before opening the door for her. Clara slid into the cool leather seat beside Vincent, completely out of her depth. She felt like she was cosplaying someone else's life. A richer, sleeker, more jet-set version of herself. No one had ever opened a car door for her. No one had ever driven her anywhere who wasn't being paid minimum wage by Uber. The car began its glide through Florence. The buildings passed like pages from a fairy tale. Old bookstores, trattorias, flower markets bursting with scent. And all the while, Clara said nothing, because she couldn't find her place in the scene. Finally, she asked, "What are you really doing here?" Vincent turned his head. His eyes, blue-green and strangely tired, met hers. "Escaping," he said. The car wound up a narrow road, surrounded by cypress trees and ivy-draped walls. And then suddenly the villa appeared, an estate built into the hillside, wrapped in vines and whispering old money. The staff greeted Vincent with silent nods and subtle bows. A woman named Bianca took Clara's bag. "No one knows you're here," Vincent murmured, almost as if warning her. Clara stepped into the grand foyer, and felt the weight of time. Dusty sunbeams sliced through stained glass. Paintings older than America hung from stone walls. And there, just beyond the courtyard, she could see a fountain bubbling gently beneath olive trees. She stood still for a long moment. And then Vincent said softly, "This place used to belong to someone I loved. She's gone now." Clara looked at him. Really looked. There was no sadness in his voice. Just absence. Like the grief had dried out long ago and turned into dust. Back in Queens, Clara's apartment was 540 square feet with leaky radiators and water-stained ceilings. Her life was shifts, alarms, and grief no one spoke about. Every day, she stood between life and death. And when the death won, she held the hands of strangers and whispered lies to comfort them. You're going to be okay. Your daughter's on her way. You're not alone. But she was. She hadn't dated in 4 years. She hadn't cried since the funeral. She hadn't wanted anything, really, except for sleep and a second to herself that didn't carry guilt. And that's what was haunting her now, in this impossibly beautiful Italian villa. The sensation of being allowed to breathe. No one needed her here. No one was coding on a table or screaming into a phone. So when Vincent asked, "Are you hungry?" she answered honestly, "I don't remember." Lunch was served on the terrace by a fountain, homemade pasta, crusty bread, fresh figs, and honey. Clara tried not to moan at the first bite. Vincent watched her. Not in a flirtatious way. More like a man who had forgotten what real pleasure looked like, and was watching someone rediscover it. "I take it hospital food doesn't taste like that," he murmured. Clara snorted. "Hospital food tastes like existential dread with a side of canned peas." He chuckled, and for the first time, the chill in him melted. Then he asked, "What made you become a nurse?" Clara paused, fork midair. "Have you ever watched someone you love disappear slowly?" she said. He didn't answer. "I have. My mother. Lung disease. When she died, I knew I never wanted anyone else to go through that without someone holding their hand." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Vincent nodded once. "That's rare." "What is?" "People who choose pain." Clara looked away. "Sometimes pain chooses you first." Later, Clara wandered through the villa's courtyard while Vincent took a call behind shuttered windows. She stumbled into a study, dim, masculine, filled with books and photographs in old silver frames. She noticed one right away, a woman. Olive skin. Wild hair. Laughing in a vineyard. Another frame. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, sitting in the same courtyard she'd just passed, legs swinging over the edge of the fountain. A headline peeking from under a book made her pause. "Tragedy strikes tech empire. Fiancé of Vincent Villaro dies in fire. Foul play suspected." Clara's stomach twisted. Villaro. Now she knew why his name echoed somewhere in her brain. He was that Villaro, the reclusive billionaire tech genius who disappeared from the public eye 3 years ago after his mansion burned down. The tabloids had spun wild theories. A jealous rival. A vengeful betrayal. The death of his fiancée had been the end of his empire. And now he was here, sitting across from her. Alive. And not as unreadable as he seemed. He'd lost someone too. That evening, as the sun dipped low over Florence, Clara stood barefoot on the balcony, a shawl around her shoulders. She hadn't called the airline. She hadn't checked her email. She hadn't texted her sister. And she wasn't sure why. Vincent appeared beside her without a word. He handed her a glass of wine. It wasn't flirtation. It was offering peace. A silent ceasefire between two people carrying grief like matching scars. "You don't talk much," Clara said softly. "I used to," he replied. "But people ruin your words." She looked at him. "You don't seem ruined." His eyes met hers. "That's because you don't know where to look." They drank in silence. The city stretched below like a glowing storybook. "I'm sorry about her," Clara said. Vincent didn't ask who she meant. Just nodded once. "People thought I killed her," he said. Clara didn't flinch. "Did you?" "No." A pause. "But I didn't save her either." Have you ever felt like life accidentally gave you a break you didn't ask for, but secretly needed? Tell us in the comments. What moment changed you, even if you didn't see it coming? That night, Clara lay on the guest bed in a villa that smelled of lavender and stone. Her window was open, letting in the sound of distant music and church bells. Somewhere beyond her curtain of worry, something fragile was blooming. She didn't know what to make of Vincent Villaro, but she understood his silence. She understood how easy it was to pretend you were fine, until someone asked a real question. Clara didn't belong in this world of Italian gardens and ghost-filled villas. She belonged in scrubs, with blood on her gloves and sadness in her pockets. And yet, she wasn't reaching for the exit. Not yet. The world was quiet when Clara woke. She wasn't used to waking without sirens or schedules or sterile fluorescent lights humming above her. Instead, she opened her eyes to soft linen sheets, golden sunlight slanting through arched windows, and the distant call of church bells echoing over the Tuscan hills. She stared at the ceiling for a full minute before sitting up. It took her a moment to remember where she was. Italy. A billionaire's villa. Still wearing someone else's fate like an oversized coat. She slid out of bed, barefoot on the cool terracotta tiles, and pulled on a white robe that had been left for her. On the dresser, a fresh espresso waited on a silver tray beside a handwritten note. For when you're ready to stop pretending this is a dream. V. Clara almost smiled. Almost. She lifted the cup, sipped, and whispered to herself. Still not real. She wandered into the study again, the one filled with old books and older ghosts. She was drawn to it, the way some people are drawn to locked rooms or memories that hurt in interesting ways. On the desk was a new envelope. It hadn't been there yesterday. It was thick, cream-colored, unmarked except for one elegant initial in wax. C. Clara frowned. She hadn't told anyone she was here. No one knew she was in Italy, except the airline and her sister, and maybe the Uber app. But no one would have sent something here. Not with her name on it. Not like this. She looked around. The villa was silent. Sunlight danced through dust motes. She hesitated, then broke the seal. Inside were two things. One, a photograph. Black and white. Grainy. A woman stood at a fountain. Hair twisted into a bun. She looked eerily like Clara. Two, a note. Handwritten in looping, careful script. She wasn't the only one watching you. You should ask Vincent why you're really here. Clara's chest tightened. She read it again. And again. The handwriting was feminine. Slanted, stylish, maybe European. But it wasn't just the message, it was the implication. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a harmless boarding mistake. Someone had wanted her here. Clara found Vincent near the olive trees, dressed in charcoal slacks and a white shirt rolled to his elbows, reading a newspaper and drinking espresso like he hadn't just invited a total stranger into his ruined past. He looked up when he saw her coming. "You're up early." "Got a delivery," she said, holding up the envelope. His eyes flicked toward it, and then away again. He didn't ask what was inside. Didn't blink. "Who brought it?" he asked. "I don't know." "You open it?" "I did." Silence. Then she said too softly, "Who do I look like to you, Vincent?" He exhaled slowly, folded the paper, and set it down. Then he said the one thing she hadn't expected. Her name was Isadora. Clara blinked. "The one who—" "Yes. The one who died in the fire." "Yes." "She looked like me?" "No," he said. "You feel like her." They sat in the garden. Two people orbiting a memory neither of them understood yet. "She was a historian," Vincent said, staring into the distance. "Loved maps, languages, lost stories. She believed every family had a secret buried under its kitchen floor. She said silence was just memory with no mouth." Clara listened, breath caught in her throat. "She disappeared before the fire," he continued. "We argued. She left a note. Said she needed space. When I came back 2 nights later, the house was burning. I thought she'd gone, but they found her inside. Upstairs. Locked room." He swallowed. "They never explained how she got back in. And I never figured out if she came home, or was brought back." Clara whispered, "You think someone killed her?" He looked at her. "I think someone wanted me to think I did." She showed him the photo. The note. He didn't react at first. Then he said, "That fountain, it's in the cellar garden. It's been dry for years." They went down together, into the lower courtyard past twisted vines and iron gates. And there it was. The same fountain. Cracked. Empty. Forgotten. But real. Clara stood in front of it and felt something stir in her ribs. "Who's Lucia Benetti?" she asked. Vincent hesitated. "She worked for Isadora," he said. "As an assistant. Translator. We lost touch after the fire." "Is she the one I was mistaken for?" "Yes." Clara turned to him. "Vincent, what if this isn't a mistake?" He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time there was fear in his eyes. "Then you're in danger." Later, Clara sat on the edge of the stone fountain, her fingers tracing moss-covered edges. She didn't know what she was doing here anymore. What had started as a weird twist of fate now felt like something else. A thread being pulled, a story that hadn't finished writing itself. Why did Isadora leave a note saying she needed space, only to die mysteriously? Why did Clara look like her? Why was someone watching her now? And why did Vincent, this man who clearly didn't trust anyone, trust her? Or did he? That night, after dinner, Clara stood in the kitchen with her hands covered in flour. She had cooked, insisted on it, made fresh gnocchi by hand, because doing something familiar grounded her. Vincent had stood at the edge of the counter the entire time, watching, silent, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. When she handed him a plate, he took it. ate slowly, then said, "You're the first person who's ever cooked in this house since she died." Clara froze. "Do you want me to stop?" He shook his head. "No. It smells like life in here." She didn't know what to say. So instead she asked, "What do you think this is, Vincent?" This? This. Us. Me being here." He looked at her, then stepped closer. So close she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. "I think it's not a mistake," he said. "And I think you're not just a nurse from Queens. Do you think Clara's arrival was really accidental? Or do you believe someone planned this all along? Leave your theory in the comments. We're reading every twist you uncover." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She walked barefoot through the stone hallways, feeling the weight of the villa like a second skin. She found herself in Isadora's old bedroom, preserved like a shrine. Books still on the shelves, scarf still hanging from a chair, and on the dresser a mirror. She looked into it, and for the briefest second, she swore she saw someone else looking back. Someone with the same eyes, the same hair, but a different presence. The candle flickered, and then the window blew open. The gust had slammed the shutters against the stone walls, but Clara was frozen, not by the noise, but by the reflection. In the antique mirror framed in tarnished silver, her own face flickered, and then warped. For a moment it looked like her but older. Paler, eyes more hollow. Then just like that, it was her again. Only her. Clara stepped closer, fingers trembling as she touched the edge of the glass. It was cold. The kind of cold that didn't belong in summer. She whispered, "Who are you?" But only her breath fogged the glass in reply. Clara couldn't sleep. After she locked the windows and she ran her fingers along the edges. Tap, tap, hollow. Her breath caught. She wedged her fingers beneath a warped board and pulled. Dust clouded into the air. And then she saw it. A leather-bound journal, frayed at the corners, wrapped in a faded red ribbon. She hesitated, then opened it. The first page was blank. Then the next. And then, "If I die before this reaches Vincent, know that I loved him. Know that I was right. Lucia found it. And now she's missing. Isadora." Clara's stomach turned. This wasn't just grief. This was a trail. And it had just reopened. Clara didn't sleep. She read the journal all night, huddled beneath the blanket like a child hiding from monsters. But the monsters were real. And close. Isadora wrote about research, hidden archives, a villa in Ravenna, whispers about Vincent's family name being tied to something older than tech. A secret that her assistants warned her to leave buried. But Isadora couldn't let it go. She believed someone close to Vincent, possibly a business partner, was erasing parts of the past to protect something buried in his family legacy. Clara didn't understand it all. Not yet. But one thing was clear. Lucia Benetti had known something. And now she was missing. She found Vincent in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, frying eggs in a cast-iron pan like a man who hadn't once been on magazine covers or Billionaire'S lists. The sight of him, normal, human, should have comforted her. But all she could see were shadows now. Echoes of things unsaid. "I found Isadora's journal," she said, voice steady. He paused. Only for a second. But she caught it. "I thought the fire destroyed it," he said quietly. Apparently, it didn't destroy everything. He turned off the burner. Didn't look at her. What did she say? That Lucia found something. Something dangerous. He closed his eyes. Then Lucia's probably dead. Clara's chest tightened. And if she's not? Vincent finally turned to her, his face unreadable. "Then someone is using you as bait." It took 2 hours to reach Ravenna, a coastal town known for its mosaics and ancient cathedrals. But Vincent wasn't interested in the postcards. He drove himself, fast, focused, silent. Clara clutched the journal in her lap, reading the entries over and over. Names, symbols, places. A particular entry kept haunting her. "There is something older than the Villaro family fortune, something they swore to protect, even if it cost blood. I found records in the crypt. I shouldn't have. Neither should Lucia." The crypt. At first Clara thought Isadora was being poetic, until they pulled into a stone courtyard in the heart of Ravenna, and Vincent said, without looking at her, "This is the church where I was baptized, where my grandfather is buried, where Isadora was last seen before she vanished the first time." Clara gripped the seat. "And we're going in?" Vincent turned to her, mouth tight. "Unless you're ready to run." She wasn't. The church was cool, quiet, echoing with whispers of incense and centuries. Vincent led her through a side corridor, past statues worn smooth by time, and into a stairwell that spiraled downward like a forgotten prayer. The crypt was older than anything Clara had ever seen. Candles flickered. Mosaics shimmered in broken light. And there, in the back corner, an alcove behind a veil of dust, was a door. Vincent approached it slowly, then paused. Scratched into the stone, faint but legible, were 5 letters. Clara. Her blood turned to ice. Vincent's voice broke the silence. She knew you were coming. Inside the room, there were boxes. Scrolls. Letters. Photos. Things from another era. And in one corner, a file folder labeled Benetti Bennett. Clara opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a copy of her nursing license. Photos of her as a child. Her mother's obituary. A birth certificate, one she had never seen, with the name Clara Benetti listed, then crossed out and replaced with Bennett. She stumbled backward. My name, she whispered. Vincent caught her arm. What is this? Clara felt dizzy. I don't know. I don't know anymore. But someone had tracked her for years. Someone had buried her under a different name. And now they wanted her back in the story. Back at the villa, Clara collapsed into a chair in the courtyard, face pale, hands shaking. I thought I was just a nurse, she said. I thought this whole thing was a mistake. Vincent crouched in front of her. His voice was softer now. Less guarded. It wasn't. You were pulled into this. Just like her. Then what am I, Vincent? Some pawn in a dead woman's story. No, he said. You're the only one who's not pretending. She looked at him, really looked. Then tell me something real. Anything. The truth. He hesitated. Then slowly. I never stopped loving her. And I don't know what it means that you're here. But it terrifies me. Clara reached out impulsively and touched his hand. Me too, she whispered. Clara's past isn't what she thought. If someone changed her name and erased her history, who was trying to protect her, and from what? Drop your theories below. We're reading everything, and the best comment might appear in the next part of the story. That night, a storm rolled over the hills. Rain lashed the windows. Thunder growled in the distance. Clara stood in the doorway of the study, journal pressed to her chest, eyes dark with questions. Vincent looked up from his notebook, his shirt half unbuttoned, his hair damp from the rain. She stepped forward. You okay? He asked. She nodded. Then, without thinking, she said, I think I was meant to find you, but the key, still hidden in the corner of her journal, fit perfectly. Inside, dim light, ancient files, brittle folders wrapped in twine, rows of handwritten ledgers. Clara scanned the documents. Birth records. Property deeds. A series of transactions made between 1957 and 1963. But then something strange. A file labeled Clara B. Backup protocol. Her heart stilled. She opened it. Inside, medical records. Psychological assessments from before she went to nursing school. Notes about emotional stability and ethical predisposition. And at the top of the folder, typed cold. Approved for contact. Initiate via misdirected flight strategy. Clara dropped the file. Everything blurred. Spun. Vincent froze. Clara, what is that? She turned to him, eyes wide with betrayal. What did you do? You knew I'd end up on that jet, Clara said, voice shaking. Didn't you? Vincent's face was pale now. Still, like a man standing inside a burning building, refusing to run. I didn't plan it, he said. But someone did, she whispered. He nodded. Slowly. I found your file 6 weeks ago, he admitted. After Lucia vanished. It was buried in an old database tied to my grandfather's holdings. Your name came up. Over and over. You didn't think to tell me? I didn't want to scare you. Her voice cracked. You didn't want to lose me. He looked at her then, and she saw it. The terror. Not of guilt, but of someone who had finally let something real into his life again, and now feared it would disappear. I didn't pull you into this, Clara, he said. But I didn't stop it either. Clara stood in the middle of the archive, her chest rising and falling. You let me fall for you, she whispered. Knowing I was connected to all this. Knowing you weren't telling me the truth. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. No, it wasn't supposed to happen at all. She left. Didn't wait for the car. Didn't look back. She walked down the narrow streets of Ravenna alone, the scent of salt and stone in the air, the ache in her chest spreading like ink through water. At a cafe near the train station, Clara sat staring into a glass of water. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. A woman's voice accented. Low. Familiar. Clara Bennett, it said. Or should I say, Benetti? Clara froze. Who is this? You were never meant to see the files, the voice continued. Vincent wasn't supposed to open the archive. He's been off the rails since Isadora died. Clara stood up, heart racing. Who are you? I'm the reason you're still alive. Leave now, before they make you disappear, like Lucia. The line went dead. Back at the villa, Vincent stood in his office, surrounded by shattered glass. He'd smashed a tumbler against the wall. He'd watched Clara walk away from him, and the only woman who ever made him feel again was gone. Bianca, the housekeeper, stood in the doorway. You let her leave alone, she asked quietly. She's not a prisoner. She was your salvation. Vincent's hands curled into fists. She was a warning, he said. And I ignored it. Was Vincent trying to protect Clara, or manipulate her? Do you believe he deserves a second chance? Tell us in the comments. Would you walk away, or give him one more moment to explain? That night, Vincent sat in the garden alone. The air was thick with dew. The stars were blurry with grief. He held Isadora's photo in one hand, and Clara's file in the other. 2 women, 2 ghosts. One still breathing, and walking away from him. He didn't know who the enemy was anymore. But he knew this much. Clara wasn't a mistake. She was the key. And if he lost her now, he'd never solve the one mystery that still haunted him most. Why did she look like the woman he lost? And why did loving her feel like losing her all over again? Clara walked through Florence like a ghost, anonymous and dissolving. Her soaked sneakers slapped the cobblestones. Her curls clung to her neck. Her hands had stopped shaking, but her heart had not. Rain blurred the world. Locals passed by her without notice. A couple laughed under an umbrella. A man played cello beneath a cafe awning. Clara kept moving. Like if she stopped walking, she'd disappear completely. Like standing still would be admitting what she now knew. She had never been free. Not in her past. Not in her choices. Not in her love. Clara ducked into the first open church she saw. Empty. Cold. She sat in a pew with her arms wrapped tightly around her ribs. Not because she was cold. Because she was unraveling. And she needed something, anything, holy enough to contain it. She stared at the crucifix above the altar. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. And I think I've always known I didn't belong to myself. Her voice cracked. I just wanted someone to see me. But he saw her instead. Tears slid down her cheeks. And the worst part, she added, I still want him. Vincent searched the villa like a madman. Room by room. Garden. Gate. Balcony. Nothing. No sign of her. He walked into her room and stood in the middle of it. The bed was still made. A scarf was still draped over the armchair. Her perfume, subtle, citrus, a hint of lavender, still lingered in the air like a memory begging not to be forgotten. He sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the shawl like it had betrayed him. His fists clenched. He whispered, She asked me for the truth, and I gave her half. A pause. No. Less than that. It was raining the night Isadora died, too. Vincent remembered her last message. A voicemail. One he'd saved but hadn't listened to again. Until now. He played it. Vince, I know what your grandfather did. And I love you, but if I keep going, they'll come for me. Lucia is already scared. But I can't stop. Not now. If I don't come back, tell the truth. Don't protect what killed me. His jaw locked. He threw the phone. It shattered against the wall. He sank to the floor, back against the bookshelf. He whispered, I couldn't save her. Then added softer. And now I've lost Clara the same way. In a train station coffee shop, Clara sat at a table with trembling hands. She pulled Isadora's journal from her bag. Pages she had barely understood now felt like whispers from someone who understood her better than she understood herself. Tucked inside was an envelope she hadn't opened. It was addressed, If you ever find yourself in Florence alone. Inside, a photo of Isadora, smiling, holding a child in her arms. The child couldn't have been older than 2. On the back, Clara, I knew your name before you did. You are not a mistake. You are a secret they tried to bury in someone else's story. Clara stared, then whispered, Was she my mother? The possibility lodged in her throat like a shard of glass. Vincent stood at the cliff behind the villa. The wind tore at his shirt. The ocean below thundered like a warning. He had felt powerful once. Back when power meant controlling perception. Building empires. Hiding grief behind perfectly tailored suits. But power didn't save Isadora. And power couldn't bring Clara back. He He reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph. Clara, taken on the jet. She hadn't known he was looking. Her eyes were closed. Her head leaned against the window. She looked peaceful. He dropped to his knees. And for the first time since she left, he prayed. He opened his laptop. Connected to a network no one else had access to. He typed a message. Not an email. Not a text. Something deeper, coded into the server that once ran his private network. He wrote, "To Clara Bennett, or Benetti if you choose it, I didn't pull you into this story, but I didn't fight hard enough to keep you from its teeth. I loved you before I earned the right. I betrayed your trust before I even knew your full truth. If you never come back, I will still wait for you in every room you touched. V****. He didn't hit send. He saved it, encrypted it, left it buried inside the server under one word. Redemption. Have you ever left someone not because they hurt you, but because you didn't know how to stay? Drop your story in the comments. Your honesty might help someone else still holding their pain alone." In a borrowed hostel room, Clara stared at a single candle on the nightstand. Her suitcase lay untouched on the floor. She replayed Vincent's face in her mind again. The way his jaw tightened when he was scared. The way his voice dropped an octave when he was being honest. The way he looked at her like he wasn't sure she was real. She opened her journal and scribbled a single thought. What if he didn't lie to me? What if he lied to protect the part of me I hadn't remembered yet? She closed the journal. She didn't know if she forgave him. But she knew she wasn't done. Not with him. Not with herself. Not yet. Vincent walked into Clara's room one last time. On the nightstand, a candle flickered. He hadn't lit it. No one had. He stared at it, then smiled just barely, and whispered, "She's still somewhere in this story." Clara sat on a train headed north. She didn't know where she was getting off. She just knew she couldn't stay stuck. The early morning light slipped across her lap like silk. The train rocked gently beneath her, hypnotic and kind. And in her hand sat the photograph from the envelope. Isadora holding a child. She had studied it again and again. And this time she noticed it, tucked barely into the edge of the photo, almost invisible unless you knew to look. A silver locket. Clara's locket. The one her mother gave her before she died. The one she never questioned. She touched it now, fingers trembling. Was Isadora her mother? Or was she trying to protect the child of someone else? And if the truth didn't matter, what did? Vincent sat at his desk, still in last night's clothes. His face unshaven. His hands ink-stained. He had stopped trying to work. But the server, buried in his grandfather's network, kept blinking. Like it wanted him to remember something he wasn't ready to face. He entered the passcode again. Same screen. Same buried folder. Except now. One new message. A recorded video. Timestamped 7 years ago. He clicked play. The image was grainy. Isadora. Sitting on the edge of the same bed Clara had used in the villa. She looked tired. Pale. But clear-eyed. "Vincent. If you're seeing this, I'm gone. But there's something I need you to do. There's a child. She's not a child anymore. She was hidden. Protected. Her name isn't real. But her soul is. And if she ever finds you, don't protect the past. Protect her. Clara matters more than your reputation. More than your guilt. Let her save you." The screen went black. Vincent's breath hitched. He whispered, she knew. The train stopped in a small town just north of Arezzo. Clara stepped out, clutching nothing but her backpack and the locket. She wasn't sure what drew her to the hills, only that her grandmother had once mentioned them when telling bedtime stories. Stories about a villa where the olive trees grew wild and no one locked their doors. She found the old property by accident. Or fate. The woman who lived there now was in her 70s. She opened the door with a puzzled smile. "You're her," the woman said. "Aren't you?" Clara froze. "You knew Isadora?" The woman nodded. "She brought you here once. When you were little. Said you needed a place no one could find you. You used to fall asleep in that window." She pointed to a sunlit nook above the stairs. Clara broke. Tears welled up. She hadn't remembered. But her body had. Clara sat on the edge of the garden wall, sun warming her back, the photo in one hand, the locket in the other. For years she had clung to her pain like armor. But here, in this place that had known her before she knew herself, she felt something else. Not answers, but permission. To not know. To not belong. To not be whole yet. And still be real. She took the locket off, pressed it to her lips, then said, "I'm not who you wanted me to be." A pause. But I'm who I am now. And that's enough. She stood and started walking back toward the train station. Vincent lit a fire in the study. He didn't want to see another screen, another document, another ghost in the machine. But the letter hidden in Isadora's book, he hadn't burned it yet. And now, it glowed in his hand like a confession. He threw it into the flames. And that's when he saw it. As the paper curled, an ink symbol appeared beneath the top layer. A map. So faint. So intentional. He grabbed it before the fire ate it whole. It was a diagram of the estate. But not this one. A second villa. Smaller. In the north. With one word written beneath it. Salvezza. Italian, salvation. And written beneath that, in Isadora's handwriting. She won't come back until she remembers. So go find what she forgot. Vincent stood, grabbed his coat, and whispered, I'm coming, Clara. Back on the train, Clara finally turned her phone back on. 23 missed calls, 1 voicemail, and 1 video message. She played the video first. It was Vincent, disheveled, eyes red, voice raw. I didn't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know, Isadora chose you. Long before I ever could. She loved you enough to make you disappear. And I love you enough to let you go. But if you want the truth, I'm going to find it. Whether you're beside me or not. The train passed a river. The sun broke through. And Clara whispered, wait for me. Have you ever had to choose between running from love or running toward yourself? Tell us in the comments. What made you finally return to your own story? Vincent arrived at the forgotten villa at sunset. It was abandoned, ivy covered, the air thick with silence. But inside, beneath the floorboards, he found them. Photos, letters, medical charts, and a final note from Isadora. If you're here, it means she's still alive. If she's still alive, then maybe we did one thing right. Bring her back. Not for me. For you. He looked up. Just as footsteps crunched outside the villa. He turned. Clara stood in the doorway, hair windblown, eyes full of questions. Neither of them spoke. Until Vincent finally said, voice trembling, I found where you started. And Clara replied, I came to find where I end. Then, they stepped toward each other. The wind whistled through the trees as Clara stepped through the rusted gate. The villa was smaller than the one in Florence, hidden in the hills of Emilia-Romagna, crumbling at the edges, but unmistakably familiar. She didn't know how she knew it, but she did. Like muscle memory. Like something in her bones remembered long before her mind could catch up. She found him standing in the foyer, Vincent, surrounded by documents and broken sunlight. He turned when he saw her, but didn't move. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I wasn't sure you wanted me to, she replied. A long pause. Then she added, but I'm tired of running from things that are mine. He nodded once. Then come see. He led her to a back room. Dust floated in the golden light. A broken table stood at the center. On it, a collection of files, photographs, medical records, and a rusted lockbox. He opened the lockbox slowly. Inside, a birth certificate, one that hadn't been altered. It read Clara Benetti Villaro. Mother, Isadora Benetti. Father, classified. Clara inhaled sharply. Her knees buckled slightly. You were hidden, Vincent said softly. Not to hurt you, but to protect you from the ones who wanted your existence erased. Clara picked up the certificate with trembling hands. She was my mother, she whispered. Vincent nodded. And your father was my uncle. The air split open between them. So I'm, he answered before she could finish. Heir to everything they didn't want her to inherit. The fortune, the knowledge, the truth. The gunshot came before the front door splintered. Vincent grabbed Clara and shoved her behind the stone pillar in the hall, just as a second round cracked through the air. He knew this was coming. He'd sent encrypted queries through the old server days ago, hoping to bait whoever had been watching Clara. And they'd taken it. Hard. Shadows poured into the house. 3 men. Black jackets. Tactical silence. But Vincent was faster. He pulled Clara through the service hallway toward the basement. We're not running, she whispered, breath ragged. No, he replied. We're taking back the story. They emerged into a chapel buried beneath the villa, abandoned, lit only by moonlight through broken stained glass. At the altar stood a woman. Tall. Silver hair. Dark eyes. A scar down one cheek. The voice from the phone. The woman who had tracked her. You should have stayed buried, the woman said coldly. Clara stepped forward, heart pounding. You knew my mother. The woman smiled, sharp as a knife. I trained her. Protected her. and watched her fall in love with a man who got her killed. Vincent stiffened. She was silenced because she wouldn't let the family legacy become a weapon. The woman turned her gaze to him. "You both still don't understand," she hissed. "The Villaro name was never about money. It was about memory, about protecting the gate." "What gate?" Clara asked. The woman looked at her then, and for the first time, her voice trembled. "The one inside you." In those final minutes, everything broke open. The woman explained it all. Isadora had discovered that the Villaro family was part of a centuries-old intelligence lineage, protecting data, knowledge, power passed down through bloodlines and encrypted DNA storage. Clara's DNA had been embedded with a digital key at birth, tied to a buried server of unreleased global data. Documents, political blackmail, ancient research meant to destabilize the world if released. Clara wasn't just Isadora's daughter. She was the living key to a truth so dangerous. The family hid her under a new name, new country, new story. "I spent 20 years hiding you," the woman finished. "And he," she looked at Vincent, "brought you back into the open." Clara turned to Vincent, tears in her eyes. "Did you know?" He swallowed. "Only pieces. Never this." The woman raised the gun. "You can't let her walk out of here with that knowledge." But Clara stepped forward. "You don't decide who I am anymore." She fired. But Clara had already moved. The bullet hit the stone pillar behind her. Vincent tackled the woman. They wrestled, grunting, scraping, flesh-hitting stone, until the gun skittered across the floor. Then silence. Vincent stood, shaking, bleeding. The woman lay unconscious. And Clara, still standing, not broken. He looked at her. And in that moment he realized. He had always seen her as something to protect. But she was never the one who needed saving. They sat on the chapel steps, everything quiet now. The authorities had arrived. The woman had been taken away. The house was being secured. But Clara wasn't thinking about that. She turned to Vincent. "You could have left me buried," she said. "I tried to," he admitted. "But you brought me here anyway." He nodded. "Why?" He looked at her. Finally, nothing hidden. "Because even when I didn't know who you were, I knew you mattered. And when I fell for you, it wasn't because of your name. It was because you saw through everything I hated about myself." She was silent, then asked, "Do you still love me? Now that I'm not a mystery anymore?" He exhaled. "I didn't fall in love with the mystery." A pause. "I fell in love with the nurse who stayed awake to hold strangers' hands. The woman who cooked in my dead lover's kitchen like it belonged to her. The woman who kissed me like she wasn't afraid to break again." He stepped closer. "And if you want me, I'm not leaving. If someone broke your trust, but gave everything to make it right, would you let them in again? Tell us in the comments. What makes a love worth forgiving?" The sun rose over the hills of Emilia-Romagna. Clara stood outside the villa, barefoot in the grass, holding a cup of coffee Vincent made. Too strong, too bitter, just the way she'd once teased him for liking. She breathed in. There were no mysteries left. No secrets between them. Only the future. He stepped behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. "No more lies," he said. "No more hiding," she replied. She turned to face him, their foreheads touching. And for the first time since this all began, Clara kissed him not with fear or questions, but with choice. The villa was quieter now. Not empty, just peaceful. Lavender climbed the courtyard walls. The kitchen smelled of coffee and rosemary. Birds whispered along the vines like they, too, remembered the silence this place once held. And Clara? She stood barefoot in the garden, in a cotton dress and an apron dusted with flour, holding a mug of espresso. Her curls were longer now. Untamed. Free. So was she. She had stopped asking who she was. She had started asking, "What do I want now?" And she'd found the answer in small things. Kneading bread with her bare hands. Reading poetry in the sun. Holding Vincent's hand in public, no longer afraid of being seen. Laughing in the rain without apology. Being loved without a secret underneath it. Clara Benetti Villaro. That was the name on her new passport. Not inherited. Chosen. She hadn't taken it because it gave her wealth or status. She took it because every letter in that name was now hers. Benetti. The woman who gave her life and gave her up to protect it. Villaro. The man who taught her how to live again, after years of only surviving. She had declined the inheritance. Most of it, anyway. Instead, she converted the Florence villa into a non-profit medical retreat. Part recovery center, part school for trauma nurses. Casa Clara, the sign read in the garden. Underneath. Not everyone can be saved. But no one should be alone. She found it tucked between pages of an old journal one morning while cleaning. His handwriting. Sharp. Unfinished. Unsure. I loved you before I knew your name. I loved you in the space between apology and silence. I would have loved you even if you never forgave me. But you did. And now all I can do is try to deserve it. Clara closed the letter, pressed it to her chest, and smiled. The sun was melting into the hills, bleeding gold and lavender across the sky. Vincent was setting the table outside. 2 plates, a candle, and the bottle of wine they'd saved since their first night back in Florence. A bottle neither of them had opened. Until now. Clara walked out with the breadbasket. He looked up, smiled. She hadn't grown used to the way he smiled. Like it still surprised him that she stayed. Like every day he got with her was a quiet miracle. I found your letter, she said. He raised a brow. Which one? The one you didn't send. He chuckled softly. I didn't think you'd want it. I didn't. But I needed it. A beat passed. Then he said, Are you happy, Clara? She looked around. At the sky. At the candle. At the man. I'm whole, she whispered. That's better. Have you ever found healing in a place, or a person, you never expected? Tell us below, what does wholeness mean to you? Later that night, after dinner, Clara stood at the edge of the vineyard. Stars blinked overhead. Crickets hummed. The wind smelled like promise. She closed her eyes. And it came, not as a flashback, but as a feeling. Her mother's voice. You were born for more than pain, Clara. You were born to remember joy. She opened her eyes. Tears filled them. But she didn't cry. She smiled. Because joy wasn't something she feared anymore. In the morning, they were flying to Rome. Not on a private jet. Just a simple, ordinary flight. Together. Clara sat beside Vincent on the plane. No first-class luxury. No mistaken identity. Just a woman who chose to sit beside the man who had once made her question everything, and now gave her a reason to believe again. As the plane rose into the clouds, Clara leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, Thank you for getting it wrong. That day, at the airport, Vincent smiled, turned his head. I didn't get it wrong, he said. I just got there too soon. She laughed, eyes closed, heart open, and together they soared toward the rest of their story.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and more intriguing than you can ever imagine.